Hello and welcome yet again to another episode of Cards and Cardboard. Today we're looking at a game that my wife and I really enjoy playing. It's kind of been seeing a lot of attention lately due to some new releases coming out for the series. But we're going to be talking about BattleCon. In this case, Devastation of Indines, or Indies, however you want to pronounce that, by Level 99 Games. Now, this is a pretty big box, and it retails for quite a bit. There is a new set coming out that is already kind of hitting store shelves, and if people were part of the Kickstarter for the War Remastered version, they will be receiving this version hopefully as well, which is BattleCon Fate, which is a good introductory game for most new players at a much smaller price point. So, without any further ado, we're going to kind of just jump right into the box here, show you what comes in this version of the game, and then we'll follow it up with some final thoughts with more of the commentary there. Okay, so quick warning here as we go into my box here. I've removed the insert, and I do have a few extra bits in here from expansions, so take that with a little grain of salt, but for the most part I'm going to show you what actually comes in the box. So to start off, you have a very elaborate rulebook here that is quite big and has many examples of gameplay in it, as well as the rules and variants on how to do special game modes and how to use many of the things that come in the box, as well as explanations of each of the fighters and their corresponding kits that they're going to be actually playing with. So overall, this is a really solid rulebook, and I love the fact that it's got all the stuff in the back here, including a QR code to learn how to play this game, which we'll probably put a link in the description later on. You also have a thing for something called Battle Quest, which is kind of a co-op and single-player mode that is more of like a puzzly adventure where there's a bunch of monsters in this dungeon, and you have a list of items that you can purchase throughout the game and deal with these. I've tried this once or twice. I can't really do a review on it. It's interesting. It's more like a puzzle, and it might not be for everyone. Now, this is probably the best part here, is you got yourself a little don't panic guide here, which is like the first thing you see. And also, it comes with the little list of the different types of flights in this game. Now, flights are kind of just the best way of organizing complexity of a character, not necessarily power. But you're going to see things like first level fighters are much more easier to master and more straightforward than, say, a master flight character who might have very finicky ranges or different priority adjustments, more tokens and field maneuverability versus maybe just running up there and beating them in the face. So, I mean, there is a definite difference in the play modes, but each of the characters kind of comes in these similar types. You know, you got your juggernauts, you've got your rushers or brawlers, you've got your ranged characters, you've got your kind of tactician types, and you even have some that use various items or special abilities or powers. So that's definitely something that's good. We're just going to go ahead and skip these little rulebooks as those are from expanded material here. So you also get this very large, nice game board. In other releases of the game, however, they kind of made a more compact version. And I know with the Fate expansion that they actually changed up the layout of the game board, as well as gave you access to game board cards that you can also use to make a smaller terrain to make the game even more portable, if that's your kind of jam. But what I can say here is that this is just the best way to represent what's going on the game board. You have the areas where your fighters start. You've got these little sideline areas to let you know where the end of the battlefield is. These will open up if you're playing in the 2-player mode, or the 4-player mode, or the multiplayer modes. So that way you can have a slightly larger fighting area. You get your first and second discard piles for when you play cards later on, which we'll get into later. And you have a little anti-zone here, which holds your tokens and other various equipment and stuff while you're playing the game. So you also have your kind of sequence of how the game is played here in summary, just so that way you have a reminder and a way to check all your timing and priority in the game. Now, I actually have all my fighters here lined up in flight order, from 1s to 5s, and each of them kind of comes with a little kit. And the best way to show you this is just to kind of go in here, pull out one of the fighters that is best known in the game here as Eligor. Now, every character kind of has a little envelope that's supposed to hold their cards. It works out fairly well, but the glue is pretty loose here, and it's come off on the seams, so that's kind of a downside. I also have some extra content here, so I'll have to make sure I get that out. So this character has his complete kit of cards here, and tokens, and his little standee figure to show where he is in the sequence of battle. Each of these cards is actually known as a style card for the most part here. That's what most of their cards are going to be made up of. You also have a reference card to give your opponent, which lets you know what each of your styles do, as well as your finishers and unique base here, which I'll explain that a little bit. You have your character card, which gives you all of your ability text, how this character works, and what special rules they have, as well as their artwork. And as I said, you have all of these lovely styles, which are the first part of an attack combo, and have the various stats and rulings on them listed very nicely, very easy to see. And they also come with a unique base as well, which is the second part of an attack combo. As you can see, there's a red card and a blue card. These actually come together to form a special attack. And you will kind of add up the sides from each side, and that'll be the attack total, as well as anything that happens during the game round. That's kind of the best way to explain that. I'll kind of show you a little later on, but that's mostly saved for a Let's Play video. And we will be doing maybe a few Let's Play videos later on the channel for your benefit and our amusement. The final card that you get in here is also a finisher, which is double-sided, so you can actually change which finisher you want to use depending on your opponent. In the other game modes, this is kind of a static thing that will be there. Whenever you hit 7 or less life, you can use this. But in the new rulings for some of the extended stuff that's just come out in the new light, you can actually find ways to maybe switch this around or use this earlier than that. But this is kind of your end-all, beat-all attack. It usually has some sort of major game-altering effect, and is just really a bit of excellent because each character, again, is very unique. So you're going to have an interesting setup every time you play. Now, since I don't own a second copy of the game, I can't really do very many mirror matching, which is definitely something that some people might try. By no means feel obligated to actually buy a second version of this game, because there's just so much in this box that you can play with just this one box. And as I said, you've got a solo mode, and you can also do a 1 versus 1 mode. If you have the players for it, you can actually support up to 4 people fighting at once. Now, one thing that I have here is actually a thing that I organized all of my bases and mode cards. Now, this is where all these bases come from, and there's a full set of 4 of them for each player that they can use, as well as the fact that there are technically also beta bases and one set of Almighty and EX betas, or EX bases. I'll kind of get into those a little later on, but for right now I want to show you the bases. And I know I'm saying a lot of, we'll get into it later, but there's just so much in this game, it's really difficult to comprehend it all in one little sitting. So what you have here is the second part of attacks. These usually are the same thing all around that you're going to see for every character, because most of the time you're going to be playing these bases against the same bases. You can technically do the alpha and the betas, but that's going to be in my final thoughts here, as I don't think they gel quite all that well because they're slightly different. But you have things here like the strike, so you pair it up with another thing like one of the styles that the character has, and this is always going to give you this kind of stun guard, which is a very important game term for later on. Gosh, there's so much later on, I'm sorry. You've got your range, your power, so how much damage you do, and at what range that is. Finally, a priority number, which means how quickly do you actually use this attack versus your opponent. And there's a whole set of these to go into, and they have different ways of moving your character around, how much different damage they have, or different ranges. Basically, it's a good way of kind of saying that most characters have a similar moveset, but it really is the styles that augment them and make them more unique. Now finally you have the special action card, which is kind of an additional game mode from the beginning game, but this is what's going to be in the common core game that once you learn the rules you're going to play with. And depending on what card you play this with as a base, it'll actually dictate which special action it takes. Now, in fighting game terms, this basically allows you to use your finisher, which you can do once you reach 7 health or less. You can do your cancel, which actually forces you and your opponent to choose a new attack pair for that game round. And then pulse, which actually allows you to remove elements from the game board as well as reposition the characters in any order you see fit. So that's really a lot of board control there. But once you use this, it's pretty much gone. There are ways of getting it back for certain characters. It's not very common though. And I want to take that back. I don't think there is any way you can get this back for certain characters. I think there are certain game modes where you can get this back though. So keep that in mind. Very much like in a Blaze Blue kind of approach here, if you've ever played that, which I'm not sure many of you have, but in the off case that you have, there is a thing that you can do called Burst, where basically you readjust yourself and you get your combo bar all filled up. I'm not sure if this card has changed at all, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. So apart from that, you get a whole bunch of these little life dials. I actually have multiples because of a issue I had when I first got my game. I received the second sheet of dials and actually lost a sheet of tokens. So fair warning, when you get your copy of this game, make sure that you go through all the components and make sure every character has all their cards and that you have every single token, because for some reason I've heard different editions of this game might have a few printing errors. As a result, I actually have extra life dials, which is pretty great, but again, this is just a standard life dial that you could use with any game. It starts at 20, goes down to 0, or 1 basically. Once you hit 7, the number is red, meaning that you can actually use your finisher. Now there's also the timer dial, which starts at 15 or 1 and counts all the way up to 15. That's just a timer for the game, just so you know when that timer reaches that point. Either it's going to be a draw match, or depending on how you're playing, it'll be a match where both the person with the highest life actually wins. You will also get a number of these little plastic standee tokens, which will allow you to keep your cards stood up. And you'll also get a number of bosses in here, which is pretty excellent because it's yet another game mode that you can participate in, where you will be able to take on these various different bosses with either a team of people or as solo. And there are ways of kind of doing this as solo, but there's also ways where somebody could play the boss and deal with that as well. Oh, I've got so many other little tokens here. These are meant for kind of generic tokens, things that use like the stage effects or things that have different like elements to them, or candles and stuff like that. These are coming into what are known as battle stages. I don't really use these, but I know a lot of people that do, and they are just ways of kind of saying that you're in a different arena that you're fighting in, and they're actually dual-sided to show you which side's the starting side, and then as the match progresses, what it develops into, which can provide unique advantages or disadvantages to either fighter. Now, as I said, I have these advanced bases all separated out. These come in the various sets of the betas, which give a little bit more maneuverability. It's kind of a different way of playing the game. They're supposed to be balanced with the alpha bases, but I've had some issues where they are just a bit different, and with certain fighters can really change up a match. They give you 2 sets of those, I believe. And then you go into these EX ones, which are slightly more powerful bases, and this is for your 2 versus 1 mode. So this is a great way of kind of balancing that out, where a fighter is a little stronger. They might have more health or less, or right around equal health, rather, to the 2 fighters. Usually you're going to play like 40 health against 20 health fighters. Then you have your almighty bases, which are just that, almighty powerful. They have lots of priority, lots of damage, and are capable of pretty much decimating your opponent. But again, this is usually for like a 3-on-1 match. It's kind of crazy. So that's all that really comes in the box. I actually have still a few small issues with my copy, as I don't have a reference card for one of the characters, and I actually have extra tokens and an extra reference card from another character. Man, there's a lot in this box. Don't get intimidated by it. Just sit down, make sure you have an afternoon or so to kind of organize all this. Once it's organized, you're going to have yourself a good blast, because once it's organized, it's a lot easier to kind of deal with everything and not have to worry about that. So, I don't know where I'm going to go after this. This is just so much content to kind of bring you into. We're going to probably put up a Let's Play video later on to try to introduce how to play this game a little bit. I'm definitely going to link the Watch It Played video for this, because there's just so much in here that this is just a review, and to actually know how to play the game, I would almost want to say go there, watch how to play, just to get an idea of how it plays. But just for what it comes in the box and stuff, you're looking at a lot of value, a lot of great things coming in here, so we're going to take you right into those final thoughts and show you what I really think about this game. Okay, so final thoughts time. So we've kind of seen just what's all in this box. It's really immense, especially for this version of the game. And it's a lot to take in for many new players, so that's why we're suggesting maybe you take a look at the new War or Fate of Indines that just came out. Mainly because those are better starting points, but if you're looking to kind of get in there right away and have a multitude of options right off the bat, this is, your game to go for. The only concern, of course, still is the price point and the availability of the product, but I see that these days it's much more available. And I mean, the price point for what you get is not terribly bad, especially if you're getting it somewhere with a lower MSRP or possibly a sale somewhere. So definitely keep an eye out for this as like a good gift game for somebody who's really into fighting games, maybe on the video game side, but also really enjoys board games or card games. I know that a lot of people who I've introduced this to are particularly like Magic and Star Realms fans, so people who like these kind of two-player head-to-head games, which this is probably one of the best ones I have in my collection besides a lot of abstracts. So the reason for that is obviously because of the mechanics of the game, which we'll get into later. And there's going to be a lot of questions in here that are going to kind of come up during the review here, so I'm going to try to take these each during the final thoughts segments here. So we're going to start off with the art and graphic design. Everything there works really well. Everything's very well presented. The only problem I've ever had with the game is kind of sorting out the different types of bases from each other. And that's more of just the fact that aesthetically they're the same on the back and kind of similar on the front. The only real indicator you have to switch that out is if you have the 1 or 2 in the corner there. And, I mean, other than that, it's being able to see how much your range is, how much your priority is, and then how much attack is, you have a really nice way of knowing automatically what pairs and combos you want to play with, or what things you want to try to do to outmaneuver or confuse your opponent. So we're going to give probably artwork and graphic design here a solid, well, I'm going to go ahead and be honest about this. I'm going to give it a solid 9. Because of the fact that the graphic design and everything works extremely well. And I feel that in future releases of this game, you're probably going to see a lot more changes to the graphic design, because I've been hearing a lot in the waterworks about changes that they want to put on this game, such as moving some sort of number on the card for stun guard or soak damage. So that might be something to look forward to in the graphic design. You see that in one of the other Kickstarters that just ended up here, which was the Level 99's Exceed fighting system. I'm not going to put a link to that over here until probably the end of the episode, as the Kickstarter is already closed, but knowing Level 99 games, you should be able to get on that if you want. Fair warning though, as a head-to-head two-player game, that is more of a poker-style game where you're trying to build better hands. Not like this game where we're going to go kind of right into the mechanics here. This is a simultaneous reveal game, which is really huge because as a fighting game fan, I play a lot of Street Fighter. I play mainly Blaze Blue, which is kind of my big jam there. And it's a very technical fighter, and it has a lot of the things that you see in Devastation, with dealing with positioning, ranged and melee characters going at each other, dealing with priority checks, and being able to do all these other nifty things like burst or dash or guard is kind of something that's missing, but I hear that's, again, in the forums coming maybe in a new edition of the game. Not to say that there's going to be new versions of the game, but there might be like new rules update cards that come in later on in one of the newer packs that they're going to be doing in the future. So this is very much a living game. They've made several changes to the rules from the first edition, which was the first War War of Indines from BattleCon. They recently remade that, remastered it, and rebalanced and retweaked it. Devastation is very much a complete game because of that. So they had that experience from Devastation that really only had, I believe, one rule issue that has been changed with a certain character who has a token that allows people to basically lose their start of beat effects, which is a little overpowered. It's been since re-ruled and judged out, so make sure you check the forums and errata for that kind of stuff. Just like many GMT games, the rulebook is still considered kind of a living thing, and as more cards come into the pool, as more game modes come in, you're going to be looking at a game that's going to be highly adaptive. Now, what I love about this game's mechanics is that it's highly adaptive towards whatever you're looking for. If you're a King of Fighters kind of person, you can do a 3-on-3 bout, or you can do a 1 versus 3 because they have these bases in there that kind of change it up to be kind of like a boss mode. There's so much in this box. So just for what comes in the box, mechanically speaking, I can't praise it more. If you're looking for a game that has a lot of variety or a lot of game modes, you know, just like a Magic the Gathering or other card games where you have to adjust to a special number of players, or you want to try to do some sort of odd two-headed giant thing, or really and truly you just want to do something unique and fun for that night. This is a solid 10. I have to say, once you get past the rules, which are a little confusing, you're looking at a pretty good experience right there. But then you can add in so much more and really customize that experience. And with the other games that have come out, particularly BattleCon Fate, they added a new force gauge system, which is very much like a turbo bar. Instead of using the way that they have the life dial go down to 7 life, and then you can use your finisher. So you got, again, more options for game modes, which is great. I definitely recommend looking into the extended editions for some more character options if you're really into stuff that you're not going to be using in like the competitive tournament scene of this game, but want to extend your gameplay. And of course, every set of BattleCon so far that's come out has had something unique to it, whether it be new characters or a new game mode, different ways to use the same components over again and just extend the life of this game even more. So, as a whole for the system, I have to say it can get a little cluttered, and that's where I'm going to give the overall BattleCon system an 8. Because of the fact that it's very much easy to get lost in. And some of the rules that they used to have kind of clash with some of the new rules, and you got to keep up to date with that. So that's Devastation, 10 on mechanics, but for the extended BattleCon thing, we're going to give it an 8. Because I love this whole 2-player simultaneous reveal, this guessing and outguessing and second guessing game. It's just a really solid experience. So components. You're looking at a lot of cards here. I'm not going to lie. So there's definitely the need to keep these relatively well organized, and you're going to probably want to get a bunch of baggies for this game or make tuck boxes. You got to do something to keep these fighters together. And honestly, if you do it like what I did and just kind of put their flight number on there, it'll make things a little easier to sort. Um, you could get a card organizer insert for your box or something. There's a lot of ways to do this, and I've seen so many online. I definitely recommend it if you can and have access to better cardboard, maybe attempting these tuck boxes and making sure you use, decent material in there and get all your cards in there and then all your tokens. It would have been kind of nice to maybe have a few generic tokens in there instead of all of those tokens. But it's a good way of kind of dealing with multiple fighters, so it's really hard to complain about that. So overall, component-wise, for just this box, this is going to be a 7. Namely because, one, you probably are going to want to save your cards over time. You don't need to because you're not really shuffling, but using them on the tabletop and maybe using grubby fingers and stuff will make them wear out over time. The other problem I have of it is if you go into some of the extended stuff or some of the newer printings versus older printings of the game, you're dealing with different colored backgrounds of the cards, which means you go back to step 1, which means you have to sleeve most of the stuff. So, unfortunately, there's that. And 3, the reason why I'm taking another point off is just all these tokens. It's kind of hard to keep all of this stuff together, and the little envelopes they give you are pretty much rubbish. They have a very cheap kind of glue on them, which makes them come apart easily. And really and truly, they're good for holding the cards in the baggie, but I noticed that with some later releases, they don't really do this as much, as well as with some characters, like being promotional and stuff that you might get, they don't have the envelopes at all. So, that being said, the final point that I've removed the I've removed 3 points on, and this is probably the biggest sin, is that the insert is useless, just like a Fantasy Flight insert, except that this one was molded in plastic. It looked like it could hold everything, but once you put things in envelopes or do stuff like that, you can't keep the cards organized, and the tokens will go everywhere unless you baggy them. So that's why I threw out my insert, and I think a lot of people have also followed this. It's just the insert sin. You see it from other games like Fantasy Flight, but it would have been nice to maybe see something like like little areas in a molded insert to put the cards, like in the Pathfinder Adventure card game, for example, or the original Resident Evil deck building game had a similar thing where you could actually have this little insert that had little slots in there that you could actually put the cards in, and it would actually hold them. And, that worked, and you still have to worry about tokens, but not nearly as much then. Replayability, absolutely huge. Just, you cannot get enough replayability on this game. If you dig this game style, and you're really a big fan of, like, fighting games and stuff, you know what it's like once you start going, you can play all night with a group of friends kind of thing. And that's exactly what you get in this box, and in any of the other BattleCon boxes. So, replayability is a huge 10. I have to give it a 10 on that one because I've always come back to this game, never gotten bored with it because I have so many fighters to choose from or different game modes to try out. I've got different expansion stuff that I bought from the Devastation Extended Edition and Strikers, which, oh gosh, it makes it just about any fighting game you want it to be. It is almost what it kind of amounts to. So I'm going to just keep that there and go right into our final thoughts here. So, fun factor, art, everything mechanically coming together into this just wonderful game. I give this a lot of praise. And honestly, it is something I have to say is going to probably be in my collection for quite a long time as a fighting game fan. Now, I know a lot of people out there are going to say, okay, you have a lot of other two-player games like Ashes and, Magic the Gathering and other card games that you can play, but this one feels like a fighting game more than a sense where it's one person versus one person and you're really kind of hitting each other with whatever you can, trying to outguess each other. And it doesn't really rely much on deck construction as it does rely on what you sacrifice at the time in your hand management skills and what moves you have access to that are going to pretty much allow you to have victory. So final thoughts, I'm going to give this a 9. I cannot give it anything quite lower because I've had nothing but fun with this. And it's not just the rose-colored glasses. The thing is that each character is unique, and I've played with many of them, and they all seem very well balanced depending on how difficult your personal kit is. A person who's really skilled at the game can definitely get a handicap on themselves by playing a harder character against a newbie player, and that's kind of a great way to balance out the game and really give you a contextually easy situation here where someone's playing, say, M. Bison from Street Fighter versus Ryu. Very much different complexities. Both have the potential to do lots of damage, it's just depending on how you do these command inputs and stuff. As a person who does play a lot of fighting games in the physical space, and as you'll probably see maybe a bit of footage I've put up in this video along with my wife playing fighting games a bit there, I definitely have a different way of kind of looking at this game because I came from the arcade, I came from, video games into board games, and it gives me a really unique perspective for this, especially the designer I think came from that similar mind space, and honestly, there's no kind of better way you could represent a simultaneous action game because you're dealing with the fact that the game is very much actions being selected at the same time, not you, then me, then you, then me, like, say, UFS and Exceed are. This is very much head-to-head clash, and you're trying to do this outguessing each other and choosing when to guard, or in this case dash, versus when to attack or when to retreat. And that's what a fighting game comes down to. You don't have the high, low, mid hits or the unblockables in some sense. You kind of do, but only certain characters have access to them. But in this game, you have so much modability. You can even go out and make your own fighters and make your own rules. And I know the designer himself is kind of making a whole set designed on that premise, just like Cosmic Encounter had their designer pack. So I'm going to stop here because this is a great stopping point. I hope you find some way to play this game because this is definitely something you want to play at least once or twice or 5 times, even if you can't physically own a copy of this game. If your local board game night has it, or if a friend has it, or if a bunch of you want to get together on a box, there's tons of stuff in here, and it's going to last you quite a long time. Now that being said, there's also a competitive scene for this as well. It's fairly light, but you can buy a whole tournament kit and run it out of one box for about 8 players. It's going to cost you a little bit, but you get playing mats and promo prizes to hand out, and it's kind of a great idea that I'm probably going to get into sometime. Alright, so with that being said, thank you so much for watching. You have a great night, everyone. This has been a Card and Cardboard review.